Hi, hi everybody. I was just waiting for a few people to join me. Oh, hi. Okay, so welcome to Coco Pie's first live. I should warn you people. I'm pretty awkward in front of a camera, but just bear with me. Okay, and I have my sister today with me, just for
Hi,
support.
and we are hosting this live on Theascape as well. So those of you all are watching on Thea already, hello. Shalini will be sharing some baking tips with you, and how to break the chain of bad baking that sometimes we adhere to. So
The point is like I always get a lot of people complain that baking seems like too hard a job, and it's something people find intimidating to just start with. Hi. Okay. So I just want to break that myth. It's not difficult. It's just something that is more exact than, let's say, cooking, because cooking is a more flexible process. So once we put all the ingredients in, we can check, we can choose. The cooking process is happening right in front of us. Baking, why it intimidates us is because we have to make a batter, and that's about it. And when we put it in, it just depends upon the oven, and we can't really change much after that. So the main first very important thing to make sure you have when you're baking is to basically treat it like an exact science. So it's like a chemical reaction, right? So you put a few things together, they react together, and then the leavening happens, the rising happens, the taste develops, the gluten develops. So everything depends on uh, how you start. So I've jotted down some points that I want to cover today, and I hope I am audible to everybody. Hi, thank you so much for joining me today. Uh, Thank you. Hi, Divya. So, um, I first want to address baking ingredients. So, a lot of people ask me if I get my things from somewhere special, if I have a special place that I get better grade ingredients from. Definitely, I've been doing it for a while. I've been doing it for 5 years now. So, I do get a few things from a more reliable source, but it is very easy to get all of them in your local markets as well, and it's not very difficult to come across most things you need for daily baking, like of course professional grade things may not be available to you right off the bat, but then every city has a supply chain that can actually give you what you need. So coming to how you should start with your baking now, that is the most intimidating part for everybody. So I would like to first address that all your ingredients. So basically, whatever ingredients you're working with, whether it is wet, whether it is dry, it needs to be at room temperature when you're starting off. So how that works is basically everything has a perfect state in which it gets combined with other ingredients, and that is very important to address, that something like a cold butter may actually change the recipe for you. So there are recipes that ask for cold butter, like a tart recipe, a good crust for a pie. These need those fat pockets in there. So that changes the recipe for you completely, while you might use the same butter a little softened for a cookie. So these things are very important when you're trying to bake. Second of all, do not, I would really suggest not to change the state of any ingredient. Like if you're working with butter, let's say butter is more of a solidified fat when we work with it in room temperature. So if you're melting butter and using it in your recipe, which is not required of your recipe, you're automatically changing how it will react with your batter. So these are a few things I want to address when it came to baking ingredients, that is. A lot of people ask me what is the difference between egg and eggless batters. And how do you understand? Hi, Priyanka. How do you understand how to bake without an egg thing and still get a batter that is completely consistent with what you require? So the thing is, of course, eggs are a natural part of your baking, and eggs will give you a moisture content, a leavening agent. So these actually help the cake rise. And when you are removing eggs from this from the equation, then you need to basically you have to make up and compensate for the moisture that you're taking away, also the leavening that you're taking away with the eggs. So we'll come to that later, because I'm not covering recipes today, but these are some differences I wanted to point out, because see, if you get the basics of what each ingredient does to your batter, it is much easier to grasp how to go about your batter and how to make up for, because a lot of times we don't have a lot of ingredients and we just need to know how to replace them. Maybe if you're baking at home and let's say something asks for a baking soda and people ask me, should I put baking powder, will that work the same way? It will not work the same way exactly, but because of course they are two different things altogether. But then baking powder, what you have to understand, is a mixture of, let's say, a part of baking soda and a part of weak acid salts. So these two get together, and they what they create is they automatically create that fizz that we get when you add soda to any acid, or let's say any aerated object, drink. If you add soda to it, you'll realize there's a bit of a fizz there. This is what baking powder already does for you, because it already has those ingredients in it. Now that is where these differ and stuff. So let's come to how what apparatuses you need to bake, basically. So a lot of people ask me if they need to start with a KitchenAid like the one here. So of course these are things that I have now started using after a lot of years into the field. These are not things you definitely need to start. Of course, first thing that you need to start with is an oven. If you don't have an oven, an OTG is a grill toaster oven basically. And if you do not have that, what you can also bake in is a microwave, but not necessarily in the microwave setting. You can actually put it to convection mode. It will more or less emulate the ways of your oven. It may not be exactly ideal, but it will be more or less suitable for the kind of batters that you have for cakes. Microwave, what it does is it kind of dries out your cake and your batter a lot, and the cooking happens much faster than you want it to. So that is why it is not exactly baked, it's just somehow cooked very fast, and it's not always the same thing. So I would suggest, if you're interested in baking cakes or baking pies or whatever it is that you're interested in, I would suggest you stick to a convection, you stick to an OTG. Yeah, hi Shreya. So exactly what I was explaining, microwave and oven. So microwave is basically it sends out, it dries out your food. That is how it cooks. So it dries it out very fast. The water dries out from whatever you're heating up, and it actually catalyzes the process of cooking. So that's why everything gets cooked faster in a microwave, which is not always ideal for baking, I personally think. So an oven again, of course everybody finds it intimidating to start working in an oven. That happens from time to time, and I'm very aware of that. So people are like, how do I set up the temperature, how do I set up how do I set the time, how do I know when to put it in? So it's not as intimidating as it seems. You'll always, of course everybody has a different kind of oven, a different kind of device to work with. It's not always the same. So Hi Anuja, you're asking what temperature and time if you want to bake in a convection mode. Okay, so temperature and time actually depends on the precise thing that you're baking. So it doesn't always have like if you're, let's say if you're cooking, if you're baking cookies and stuff, you may go to a higher temperature. You may go to 180 to 200, and if you're baking a cake, you might go to 180 degrees, and if you're baking, let's say, brownies or something like a pound cake, you might put the setting to lower, because these are the denser batters, and they take more time to cook, and you don't want to burn them. So these are the differences between timings and temperatures, and that is something you can always figure out with each recipe, because they differ from object to recipe to food item. Everything has a different baking time and temperature. Also, your device plays a very big role. Now, let's say you get a set of
I'll just interrupt you
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah,
Shabana has a question regarding the OTG to use, which
Oh yeah,
brands.
hi
since you're talking
Shabana. So
about it.
OTGs, see, I like any like most electrical appliances, I would say always stick to good brands that you get good services from. So let's say I work with Amalfi Richards, and so there are Prestige ovens, there are Bajaj ovens. These are more home grade ovens. There are a lot of professional brands out there, but then that's not like cooking ranges and everything. That's not something everybody buys especially in India. So it's okay to just get like a 30 to 40 liter for your home use. That's, I think,
Say
big
to
enough.
start with a smaller OTG would be better.
Yeah,
no,
like
when you're
the
just starting.
smallest ones are toaster ovens, but they are very small usually, so they don't have a lot of space for a lot of things that you might want to make a big pie, and you won't have enough space to fit it in. So I'd say for home use, because you want to cook for your family and everything, you can get a 30 to 40 liter. I think that is really good. And so again, the heating, you'll see if you work with an oven. Of course, if you work with a convection, you have to stick to a certain temperature, and you can't do much else. How an oven is better for baking in that case is when you put it into an oven, you'll see you have heating rods in an oven. So there are 2 rods on top and 2 rods at the bottom. So any oven will have that. And you will notice that there are knobs on the right side. Most ovens will have knobs on the right side panel, and there will be 3. One will give you the temperature setting, so you can, before you start working, what you do is you preheat an oven, and that is very important for any kind of baking. You want to set up the temperature, you want to give it like 5 to 10 minutes and to heat up well. And there you'll see on the middle knob in most ovens, you'll see there are markings that show you which rod is heating up at what setting or temperature setting. So you'll see there's an option for heating only with the upper thing. That is something we use mostly in grilling, because so when you put in your food and you want them to char, like a meat or even something like a meringue, so if you want to char it from the top, you put the heating rods at the top. That is what gives you an even coating of the heat on top of the food. Again, if you're baking cakes and cookies and stuff, I would always start with the bottom rod, because the bottom rod gives you enough time for any kind of batter to rise a little bit, and it gives it time before it burns up or cracks up. So a lot of people ask me why my cakes are cracking on the top. So one of the reasons is that it is heating on the top quite a lot. So if you're heating the top quite a lot, the batter on top bakes up before the bottom gets to rise. So what happens is the top bakes up, and then the bottom batter, it kind of breaks through like a volcano.
Because the top becomes heavy,
Yes.
so it starts sinking.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's the most basic explanation for it. So when you're baking a cake and everything,
Heat and time.
preheating, temperature and timing. Okay, Shraddha, thank you for asking. Preheating temperature is basically the same temperature. Most recipes call for the same temperature that you're going to bake in. to do the preheating with as well. But sometimes there are certain products that tell you a lot of heating in the beginning when you preheat the oven. You heat it at a higher temperature and then you bring it down when you actually put up the product in. This usually we do in cases of things that we want to dry out a lot. Like let's say you want to dry out a fruit, or you want to dry out meringues, you want to dry out choux pastry. That's what we do when we do these kind of products. And other than that, if you're working with cakes and everything, I think the temperature can mostly stay same, and I think that works pretty well.
So Izzy is asking, even with the same recipe, sometimes the cake is so moist and at other times it's not. Is it because of the eggs?
Okay, so I was coming to that right now. So the thing is, measurements, first of all, of course, the same recipe may look different to you from time to time, and sometimes you won't realize because you probably don't do it professionally yet, or maybe you are, but there are some things to learn yet. So what the first mistake a lot of people make is basically not taking the right amount of the ingredients. So let's say we mentioned 3 eggs. Now I'll show you, I can't show you today, but there are, if you go to your markets, your local markets, you'll see there are eggs of different shapes and sizes. Yeah, you can actually, if you have, I can show them the example then. So let's say if your recipe calls for like a 5-gram weight for the cake, for the egg, and your egg has 7 grams, that also makes a difference. Not as much, but sometimes it does affect your batter a lot. If it's specific to that kind of weight measurements. Again, we measure with cups, we measure with weighing scales. Give me one moment, I'll get the weighing scale. So this is how a standard weighing scale looks, and it's very easy to get. You can get some off of Amazon, you can get some in your local baking supply stores. And what this does is it gives you an exact gram or kg measurement of what you're working with, and that is very important when it comes to recipes. So let's say something called for 150 grams and you've put in even 160, that actually matters a lot. That makes a lot of difference. And so thank you. So these are the eggs I was talking about. You see, these are more or less, these are the normal eggs that you get in the market.
The white one is the normal thing that you get on the crates, the local markets and even the shops.
Maybe. And so there's like a significant difference in the size. So this also affects your recipe in general, with moisture, with leavening, everything that it affects. Now,
Shabana wants to know, many OTGs come with convection fan. How does that work?
So convection fan again is something that helps with the temperature regulation inside your oven. So what happens is when the heating rods are heating up, so sometimes what happens is the top may heat up a little more than the bottom, and maybe your oven is not up to its, it's not that the fan is only needed for that, but then it helps regulate the temperature. Sometimes rods may have different heating levels basically. So the fan helps with regulation of temperature. It helps a lot with rising evenly, but you may not use it as well. It's not
as
like
in the rods are not always homogeneous in the
heat it may not be homogeneous, because sometimes one of my ovens, they bake the heat at the back is much more than the heat in the front. So your own equipment is very important. You might get recipes from all over the world, and they may not work with you because you probably don't have a device that works the same way as the device that they are working with. So you will always need to practice and gain experience on your own device, because that matters a lot. quite a lot.
Oeshani wants to know that if she should put the rack in the middle while
Okay.
baking.
So I would suggest for most recipes to put your rack right in the middle, because that always gives you even heat from the bottom and the top. Because see, every recipe will need eventually some heat from the top as well. And when you're placing it in the middle, that gives it that ideal placement where it gets enough heat from both ends. But yeah, sorry, it's okay. But if you need more of bottom heat and less of top heat, like in cakes or anything, you can place it at the bottom as well, and that might work pretty good actually.
Megha is asking, is it the same with baking in an oven as it is in an OTG?
So
I think she means a microwave oven by the oven.
So
right?
yeah, if you hi Megha, if you are talking about a convection mode, like I said before, if you go back a little bit, I have already addressed this, that the convection is a little more challenging, because it gives you only one temperature range and you can't really go up and down while you're baking it. You may in some devices, but some devices don't let you do that. Again, you cannot really handle the top temperature and the bottom temperature. You can't really regulate them exactly, so that sometimes becomes a problem. But a lot of people do feel comfortable with convection, and that's also okay, because everybody has their own process, their own procedures. There's no hard and fast rule exactly, so
It depends on your comfort level with the machine, I
and
think.
baking should be a very enjoyable process. Don't think about it as a task. It's just hold on a second. Why is this? Okay. Yeah, we're back on. So baking shouldn't make you feel like it is not something for you, because let me tell you, it's much easier than cooking once you get the drift. So cooking demands like a constant attention to your thing. So every 5 minutes you have to check whether it's sticking to the pot, whether you're cooking too much, whether it's steaming too much. So baking doesn't need doesn't demand that much attention if you know what you're doing and if you're confident about the batter that you've just put in, because more or less how you've worked on the batter before that, or the dough before that, more or less decides how it's going to turn out in the oven. But yes, a lot of them do need some constant supervision, like cupcakes and everything. But even then, if you get around to it, it doesn't demand that much attention from you. So it's much easier. You just have to get the drift of it. First of all, I'd like to address, this was the first thing I addressed, because weight. And of course, a lot of people may not have that, and they may have cups at home. So these are how cups look. Of course, this is like a 1/4 cup. This is much smaller than a cup. And this is a half teaspoon. But when you get these, you'll realize you get it in sets.
Measurements are very important in baking.
Yes. Measurements, like I said before, they're very important. And again, no matter how many silicone molds you find out there, these are always more reliable. So when you get an aluminium device to cook in, I think it actually spreads out the heat very evenly, and it helps your cakes rise much better, I think. And also they're more reliable to keep around when you're working long term. This is a full cup basically, and I just wanted to show something, because a lot of people make these mistakes. So when you work with I labeled my, I'm that way. So anyway,
But it works out, I think.
Yeah, of course.
When you're
It
under
helps a lot.
pressure, when you're working out.
So this is the correct method of pouring the ingredients in your cup. And what you do is you put it in. You don't scoop it out with it, because when you're scooping out, you're stuffing in a lot more than you need. And then you level off like this. You just level it off. You see, this is exact 1/4 cup. That's how you measure it. You don't heap it, you don't stuff it in. And the worst thing we do is we scoop it out like this, and that what it does is it stuffs in a lot more, because cups, you'll have to see, these are not weight oriented. These are how much you can fill each of these vessels with. So if you fill it much more than it should be holding, then you're already hampering your recipe over there a little bit. So that affects your recipe as well. And let me talk about.
Divya's been asking for the cakes. Divya, we are not doing any cakes today. We are just showing you the equipment.
Yeah, so we're not
so that in
covering
the
any
next
recipes.
class we can cover something, related to
absolutely.
baking.
We're
Step
not
by
covering
step.
recipes at this moment. At this moment, it's more or less about people asking me about solutions to things, troubleshooting more or less.
So Sonia wants to know, so what is the solution for the crack on the top? I tried lowering.
So Sonia,
by
I've addressed this a little while ago. So the thing is, if you are getting a crack on top is very normal. Let me just address this. If it's a cake and if it's got a few cracks on top, it's not a problem. It's all right, and you can always shave it off. You can always cut it out and use it in your recipe. But of course, there are ways to achieve more flatter surfaces. And one of them would be, like I mentioned before, the heat at the bottom of the thing. So when you heat up the bottom rods, it helps your cake rise more and it doesn't cook it as much from the top. So what it does is it lets the batter rise a little bit, so the dome doesn't get created immediately. And there are more advanced ways. Hi Suchi, thank you for joining. There are a lot of ways to actually, like a water bath will always give you, because it cooks with steam. So water bath will give you a lot better rise, like a very flat rise. But you always need to remember to keep it at the bottom, the heat, as much as possible, and that will help it rise more evenly. And if you can just pass me the pan. Yeah. One very important thing, a lot of people tell me that their batter is overflowing, and it's rising too much and it's overflowing, and they haven't been able to control it. So basically what you do is you don't fill more than 3/4 of the pan. That's a very important tip. Whether you're baking cupcakes, whether you're baking cakes, you don't fill more than 3/4. 3/4 is the limit. You can fill less, you can have a lower cake, but never more than that, because once it starts dripping from the sides onto the bottom, it will kill you almost. Like to see your oven like that, and it's such a bad thing to clean that. So yeah, you don't want that.
Anamika is asking if she can bake in a gas oven.
Yes, Anamika, it is very easy to bake in a pressure cooker. So you can bake a cake in a pressure cooker, but of course you have size limitations that way, because it has to be less than the size of the cooker. You have to have a water bath at the bottom. You have to place a kind of a wire rack. You get those small wire racks. You put that stand at the bottom, and then you can just place your vessel in it, but you still need a cake pan for it. Any aluminium pan or a tin pan, whichever works for you. You can put that at the bottom of your pressure cooker, and you can put up you can just set it up for the time that you have to bake it. So it should work the same way. Izzy, if my recipe calls for 3 eggs without any specification for grams, should I take any eggs, or should we see size of the egg too? Thank you, Izzy. See, it's of course I explained the size difference of eggs, but it is not that difficult. If your recipe calls for 3 eggs, just notice if they have a grams measurement, and if it's telling you that the grams, like macarons for instance, macarons need very exact gram measurements for eggs. So if you see that your recipe needs the gram measurement, then I would say crack your eggs into another bowl and measure it out with a scale. And if you get that measurement, use that. And if you're using it in a cake or something, eggs don't really make it all that different. It just adds a little more moisture, it just adds a little more volume to your cake, and that's about it. So it's not that complicated. So you don't have to think about it that much.
Diotima wants to know easy frosting situations or recipes
Hi,
or something like that at home.
So some easy frostings that you can do at home is, I've uploaded one very recently, that is a buttercream. A buttercream is usually very rich, it's usually sweet, and a little sweeter on people that maybe do not prefer it. So that is of course one option. One option is you can always make a chocolate ganache. A chocolate ganache is basically equal parts of chocolate and cream, and it's one of the easiest things to actually make if you're not very adept with baking. And
Chanchal wants to know if she can use Couverture chocolate for garnishing.
Hi Chanchal, Couverture chocolate is very good for a lot of things because they have a higher content of the cocoa butter in it, and it's pretty rich. But sometimes of course if you're working with very nice chocolate melters and tempers, you can get something very stable at the end. But sometimes if something goes wrong with the Couverture chocolate, it might not set up well. So I would suggest you only work with Couverture if you're confident with working with chocolate, because sometimes it can be tricky to set up a little bit. Like, it may show you that it is setting up, but sometimes it fails on you as well, because the cocoa butter level is high, and it's softer than general chocolate. Like, you take it in your hand and it starts melting, which makes it even richer and better for use in most of the things. But yeah, setting up, I would suggest you to have some experience with it.
Megha is asking how to know which tin is a 1 pounder, which is a 2 pound.
Hi Megha. So see, everybody has a different approach to their cakes and the style of cakes that they work with. If you see taller cakes have more layers, and if you have a 1 pound taller cake, you might actually need a smaller pan. If you have a more flatter cake, you might need a bigger pan. So these are not exactly restricted to the kind of pans you're working with, as it is to the weight of batter that you're taking. So it's very important to measure out your batter. So that's again one more thing. Again, when you're using your scale and you put your cake tin on top, you'll actually know how much batter you're putting in. So that helps. If you're running a business, that really helps you understand how much to actually size your cake to. Because of course, we can't always eyeball the measurements and get the right ones. So it's very, very important. Measuring devices are very important in baking, because it's a chemical reaction. If any of you have studied science and have been to a chemistry lab, then you would know that the quantities are very, very important. So that is very important.
Rupsha is asking what she can use instead of eggs.
Okay, hi Rupsha. So there are a few alternatives to eggs. A lot of people actually use flax seeds. A lot of people use just a buttermilk batter. So basically, instead of the liquid that you're using, like just normal milk or anything, what you do is you add buttermilk or curd to your batter, and that kind of gives it more of a volume and a basic moisture that the cake needs. So that's one. Flax seeds I personally don't use, but a lot of people do, and it does work out pretty well for them. Some people use egg replacers, like they use emulsifiers, and that also helps with eggless cakes a lot, like cake gels, if you ever come across them. Those actually help a lot. So these things are always there. Fondant basic. Hi Sonia, I'm actually not covering any recipe based or fondant based workshops right now. So this is just about troubleshooting and helping people. Tiny eggs. Which brand is best for the KitchenAid in which we beat our whipped cream? Okay. So I'll be very honest, KitchenAid is a very advanced tool, and it definitely makes my life much easier. But for home use, you do not require it per se. If you want to make whipped cream, you can have those regular hand beaters. Do you have this on the side? Can you just pass this to me?
Which one?
The hand beater. So you get regular hand beaters as well. Of course, a balloon whisk will always help you with any kind of baking or anything. It's okay. So these are the hand beaters. You get those things that go into it, and you just do this. This is good enough for whipped cream that you make at home, and you don't need to complicate it further. And this, of course, if your hand is mighty and if you want to do a bit of workout, of course, why not just whip away.
Shake those upper arms while you're at it.
That's something you can always do. And of course, the KitchenAid makes it much easier, much faster. But again, this is a professional thing, and it's okay to not have very costly gadgets. It's okay, you can still manage.
Surbhi says, I usually bake eggless cakes. Have tried egg recipes 1 or 2 times, but the cake always turns out to be very hard. There's something that I'm doing wrong, beating wise.
Thank you, Surbhi. So I'll explain this. So a lot of times you'll realize that your cakes are turning out very hard or very dense. Now I have a few troubleshoots for you. So I'll just address these topics one by one, and maybe I can give you an idea of what is happening to your cake. So one very big problem is your cake doesn't rise, or it's very dense. So when you take it out, it's like a brick and it hasn't risen at all. There's no air pockets inside. So basically what is happening is you do not have enough leavening agents inside your cake. So leavening agents are basically the baking powder, the baking soda, the eggs in some cases, the cake gel. So these are things that actually help leaven your cake. It gives you an air pocket to actually work with.
It aerates the cake.
It aerates the cake.
Okay.
So now these, if they're not working well in your cake, so first of all, you may forget. You may have put less amount of it inside. Yeah, I've been there too. Like I've professionally done this, but sometimes on a busier day, maybe I've forgotten, and 2 cakes I've baked have not risen at all, and then I realize I've forgotten baking powder completely. And these things happen. It's very real. It happens to everybody. It's okay. But you might also notice sometimes that you're putting enough baking soda powder and everything, and it's still not rising. That is something that is common with people who do not bake every day, because I'll tell you what, these do not have a long shelf life. So baking soda especially, a lot of us buy the open baking sodas from the markets, and what this has is it doesn't have any expiry date to give you, because they're packing it in front of you into a smaller packet, and they've bought it at some time and they've given it to you at some other time, and you don't really know what the timeline is to work with them. So you might actually want to keep them not longer than 3 months. But if you're basically confident, if you have a packaging as to where you can see the date and everything, that works pretty well. But it may not be working if it's expired. It may not be rising your cake. It may not be working your batter. So that's something you need to address if you find that to happen. That's one. And the other thing is that makes your cakes very dense is sometimes we tend to keep beating a cake. So the more you keep beating, the more you realize that you're actually sending the air pockets
beating
out.
the air out. Okay.
So maybe you worked very hard into beating the air inside. You made a lot of aeration, and then you keep beating after you add a lot of flour to your batter, and you keep beating a lot. What it does is, because flour is much heavier than anything else that you've put into the cake so far, so what it does is it weighs down your cake, and it actually makes it difficult for the leavening agents to keep working, because you've already beaten all the air out, and that is just give me a moment.
We are having connectivity issues. I think some of our live sessions that we are hosting is dropping, but bear with us. We are trying to keep it at a base.
Yeah, because we're actually streaming 3 devices from the same internet connection, so it might be a problem from time to time, but please bear with us. If you can find a better connectivity in the Facebook or the other Theascape page, please join us there.
Hi, Shalini.
Hi, Erica. So after making fondant figures, what do you suggest to keep them from overnight except air conditioner? Okay, so the one very important thing about fondant work is you really need to keep it out of humidity. So if you're working out of a place where it is very humid,
Say India.
Not all parts of India
Just
actually.
kidding, just kidding.
No, like not all parts of India. I should address that also.
Yeah.
Because the places where I live, like Kolkata, is pretty humid. Like even at this time of the year, it's pretty humid. Sometimes it's rainy as well. So it's very difficult. It's quite kind of a challenge to work with it. But what I'd suggest is you definitely keep it in AC. And if you do not have that option, there is something I've tried once or twice, but that is a tricky thing to do. I have heated up my microwave a little bit, because microwave has a tendency of drying out the water. So I've heated up the microwave and I've let it sit for a bit. And before closing down for the night, I've put in my fondant figures inside the microwave. Not the heated microwave, the one I heated before and kept. It's cooled down now. But what happens is it's dried out inside the air. So I put it there, and then I left for the day, and it seemed to stay fine. So I think that is something that works well. And which is the best cheese to use in cake? Mozzarella or cottage? Okay. So hi Gaurav, thank you for the question. So the best cheese to use, I would say, for a cake is, I think if you're working with cream cheese, frosting and everything, then I would say cream cheese is the best to use. And again, if you're using cheese in it's in let's say a tiramisu or something, tiramisu goes best with a mascarpone. And you shouldn't use much else with the tiramisu, I think.
Yeah,
So,
that is true.
yeah, because every cheese has a different texture, and that actually adds to it quite a lot. And
Yeah.
I don't really know why the connectivity is
Should
low
we
on
just do this
device.
without the Wi-Fi, the second one, and see if it's working with your...
I think I can put this out of the Wi-Fi for a bit, because this has the... Sorry guys,
No, it's okay, it's fine.
I hope I'm audible again. So anyway, so the next
Anu wants you to share your journey as to how you came into baking.
okay,
What
thank you,
brought you
Anug.
in?
So baking isn't something I've done. I've studied professionally, so I've more or less done architecture as my career, the graduation. But after that, I thought I would go into baking as a kind of a stress buster, and I kind of started following recipes online, and I started. It came with a lot of trial and error. I won't lie, and I would always suggest people that if you're starting off, don't sell right away. Perfect your recipes. Take your time. Everything takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Take your time, perfect your recipes, and then maybe sell it once you're confident about your product, because that actually is more reliable an option for.
Debupriya says the Facebook live feed is far more stable. Is this from Insta?
Yeah, this is the Insta
the
one.
Insta one keeps doing that.
Yeah.
Insta has a problem with the live. Anyway,
Yeah, I hope it's working now. Let's hope it's all working. So the yeah, I was actually talking about the density of cakes and the rising and deflating and everything. So one very important thing is, some people tell me that their cakes rise and then they deflate as well. So what is happening there? So one reason for that could be that you've added a lot of leavening agents, because soda and powder, if you add too much, much more than the quantity that is needed for your batter, what it will do is the soda will start reacting much faster, because you don't have enough flour to actually tame it down. So it will start rising much faster, and then what will happen is it will deflate once it's done reacting. So that's what makes the center of your cake just collapse, That happens also when you've put less eggs into your batter sometimes, and you haven't made up for the moisture content. That happens with cakes that maybe did not get enough time to cook, and maybe was on its way to rising, and then it had to deflate because the center stayed uncooked. So these are the three situations where it may rise and fall again. And Also, there is another thing, if you added too much liquid to your batter like milk or water or anything, so what happens is your cake rises quite a bit with that content, and then once the water or whatever the liquid that you put in it dries out, what happens is the center kind of deflates. So these are a lot of situations where your cake might deflate. Of course, you'll know what you're doing wrong once you start measuring out each step of the way, and you actually take note of what you're doing, and that's where you can go back and see if you've done something wrong with the batter.
So we have to just make sure we stick to the recipe.
If I can guarantee you, if you follow a recipe to the T, and if you're understanding what your gadget needs and works with, you are not going to fail at any attempt, because these are the two most important things: following the recipe to the T, and the next thing is, see, ovens, they actually improve, and over time they sometimes become less efficient over time. So what happens is, let's say I've set the temperature to 180, and it's not probably heating that much, maybe it's heating it up to 160. My cooking time increases, and maybe the texture of the cake changes because I'm putting it in through much more heat, and as in prolonged heat, not much more. So what happens is, it changes the cooking time, it changes the texture of your cake, and that's where you see more differences actually in your textures, in your procedures, and that's what confuses you. That like I've put it at 180, I've put it for 30 minutes, my cake is still not baked. So basically, this is what is happening. Your device is a little different, or maybe your measurements were a little different, and it's reacting a little different. But try to keep your patience, try to work with whatever you're working with, as in keep faith in your own dish, and sometimes you can actually save it from going too far, and maybe you can bring it back from a disaster basically. And thank you, Shawnee, thank you so much. Yes, Sonia, I will be saving this session for viewing later, hoping everybody can be reached through this. So someone asked me a few days back on the story that I had put up, that sometimes the cake is baked from the outside but it is uncooked on the inside. So that is something that happens when your temperature setting is too high. So of course, if you're putting it to the right temperature and it is still seeming high, then maybe your oven again is heating it a little more than it should. You can always buy an oven temperature. So you get an oven thermometer. It basically has a steel body, and you can just place it inside the oven while the thing bakes, and you can understand what temperature it is working at. These are very handy tools, but you may not need it. What you can do is watch it very closely and see if actually your temperature is too high, and if your cake is baking up much faster than it should, then you just lower the temperature. Maybe if the default setting is at, let's say, if 160 is the temperature you're getting at 140, then you place it at 140, and work with it. See how to basically change up the recipe to work with what your oven is trying to basically produce for you, because you will have to eventually depend upon your appliances here. It's very important that you give utmost importance to understanding how your device reacts to every batter, to every dough that you put into it, because that's very important. You cannot blame a recipe all the time. Like I have done that in the past, and sometimes it happened like 2 years into my career as a baker. I actually didn't realize that my oven temperature was going low, and I realized my cakes were taking like an hour or so to bake, and I did not realize why that was happening. My cakes were drying out, and I learned on the job, let's say. So these are things you have to watch out.
That's the best way to learn on the job, I think.
Yeah, but definitely, but nobody wants to do that for home cooking. That's why we come and talk, and we try to help with this. So
Indira says it's a superb session.
Thank you, Indira. So then I would like to talk about the Yeah, I would like to talk about different types of cakes because a lot of my customers ask me if I'm baking a sponge cake, if I'm baking a
Mud cake.
mud cake. Yeah, I guess texture
Angel.
wise. So angel is not something people usually know a lot.
Know
so,
a lot about.
Yeah, so I would like to discuss the types of cakes because that will also help you find the recipe that you want to find for yourself, because there are quite a few types out there. Of course, I will not cover every topic, that becomes a class. So I will so the basic few cakes, I would say, one is the yellow butter cake. The yellow butter cake is the most common kind of cake you'll see around you, because this is the modern the modern way of baking. We cream the butter and the sugar, and we add our dry ingredients, we add our wet ingredients, and we get a batter which is more or less flowy but thick. So that is what we work with, and this is more or less a yellow butter cake. Somebody wants me to suggest good books for eggless baking for beginners. I wouldn't suggest any books, because I shouldn't, because I haven't followed any myself. But what I have followed and has helped me in my career quite a lot, has literally made my career, is YouTube, because YouTube has a lot of creators, and a lot of them have books as well that you can buy once you know if you like the creator or not. And these YouTubers, they do such amazing jobs. They give you their recipes, they give you their procedures, they show you how to do it, and it's quite a rewarding process, given that they're just giving out their secrets and everything that you can work with, and they're pretty good foolproof recipes. But as I said, you'll always need to own a recipe. You'll need to change things to fit into your your needs and your machine and everything. So that is something very important. And that I've already discussed the yellow butter cake. Next, I will go to the pound cake. So a lot of people ask me if I bake pound cakes for my normal stuff, but that is something I don't do. I'll explain why. Because pound cakes are supposed to be very dense cakes. So pound cakes are what you get in a loaf formation or a bundt cake formation. These are usually denser cakes. It is called pound cake because the name was derived because every ingredient going into the cake, the main ingredients going into the cake, were always 1 pound. So 1 pound of butter, 1 pound of flour, 1 pound of sugar. So that's how a pound cake works. And the texture is quite dense, and it takes a lot of baking time as well, which is why we bake it at a lower temperature. So that's one very important thing I wanted to address. If you have something heavy, something that takes time to cook, always cook it at a lower temperature. Keep the moisture there if you want. Keep adding moisture to it if you want, but you have to cook it at a very low temperature for it to bake from inside out. And if your thing is burning before it is cooking, then your temperature is just too high. That's just it, as simple as that. Okay, so the third kind of cake, a lot of people ask me this: what is a red velvet cake and why is it different? So there are this is something I really wanted to address for a long time, because all my personal acquaintances, friends have asked me, and they already know, because I've probably, this is like a story I tell at every party, like what is a red velvet cake. So red velvet cake is basically, why it gets its name is because of the reaction that happens while you bake this cake. So red velvet cake, the main 2 ingredients in it are buttermilk and baking soda. So what buttermilk and baking soda, or powder even, because it has soda in it, what these do is they react and they form, because the cocoa powder, the buttermilk, the cocoa powder and the baking soda, they create this acidic reaction, and what it does is it turns the cocoa powder a little bit red, and that's when you get a reddish tinge to the cake. That's the original red velvet cake. Nowadays, of course, for commercial purposes, we add colors to it and everything, and make it a little more red it normally is. But this is the very source of the name of red velvet, and it is very different from normal cakes, and it should not taste the same. It should not be a red cake which is basically the every other cake that you have. That's just wrong. That is not what a red velvet cake is. And it should be moist, it should be velvety in texture, because you're putting so much buttermilk in it, and that is what makes all the difference. Okay, so then there's the carrot cake. Carrot cake is also like a favorite amongst so many of my customers, and carrot cake is usually unique because there's a real fruit, fresh ingredient that goes into it, and what it does is it actually adds a lot of moisture to the cake, and the bits of carrots actually they give a little sweetness, they give a little moisture into the cake, and it turns out very nice and soft, and sometimes even a little sweetish, and you can actually pair it with some tart lemon or a tart cream cheese, and that goes very well with carrot cakes. So that's a different kind of cake altogether. That's more or less based on a yellow cake batter with a little less water, because always remember, when you're adding any fresh ingredient, like if you're making a mango cake at home, let's say, and you're adding like mango bits and you're adding mango juice to your cake, I would suggest always keep the batter a little heavier, on the heavier side. Maybe don't add too much water to it, don't add too much liquid to it, because what is going to happen is, while the thing is baking, your fruit or whatever fresh ingredient you've put into it, berry, fruit, anything, will actually ooze out some more water while it's baking, and that gives your cake or whatever you're baking, a pie or whatever, it gives it much more moisture. So you need to make sure you're balancing it out. So that's something that works. Sponge cake, a lot of people ask me what a sponge cake is. So sponge cake is basically the very act of creating a sponge-like texture in a cake with the help of eggs. So sponge cake, yellow cake may not need an egg based thing. So when I'm making eggless recipes, I usually go for the yellow cake batter, because that helps me create the texture and everything and the aeration without having to put eggs in it. And what sponge cake needs is, it usually needs the initial aeration to be done with eggs in itself. And hi Abhishek, no, I don't, I'm not teaching at this moment, because of course the situation is such, I cannot invite people into my kitchen at this point, but I'm hoping to do online classes soon, and I'm hoping I can actually reach out to as many people. I've been very understaffed, and I've been trying to manage that, but yeah, it's been a while, and I think it'll come out soon, so let's hope for the best. So I think that's about the general types of cakes that we work with. There are a lot more, but I think I would like to share that on a class or something better, because that would actually be more interesting to somebody who wants to take a class right now, because a lot of you have just come to join me for this session, and that's completely okay. So a lot of people have asked me how long it took me to learn everything that I know today, and let me tell you, that is not a correct way of putting it, because I have learned it on the go. I didn't learn it from any class or any institute, so I can't really give you the exact measure of how long it takes, because I've learned on the job. I've more or less, when I started off, I knew the basics, I knew how to work with a few things, and to be very honest, I always had a creative bent of mind. I was always good at art, studied architecture, so I had a few basic ideas of how to go about things, and how to let's say work with different materials, shape up things, maybe sculpt a little bit with my fondant things. So of course that helped me quite a lot in picking up things very fast. And I also have a tendency to pick up things when I watch people make them. But of course, that's not the case with everybody, and you may take more, maybe a bit longer to actually learn what I know, but it doesn't have to be that way. Okay, my Instagram.
Share to IGTV. I don't.
Yeah, that is something I'm going to do anyway, but I don't know why it ended. Anyway, I'm sorry for the thing to have ended on the Instagram one. Please join me on the Facebook one. If how will I tell the Instagram people to do that? Anyway,
We can just share it on IGTV later. Let's say
yeah,
this.
we'll just share it to IGTV. Anyway, so I think the session has come to almost an end. So that is what I wanted to end the thing with. It is okay to take your time, learn. It's not very intimidating to start your own business out of this. You don't have to start with all the appliances in place. Start with a small oven, start with a few things, start with one bowl, one whisk. That's how I started. Like we used to merely bake cakes at home for our own entertainment.
You started with a normal, very small OTG,
Exactly.
like the ones you generally use. at
I
home.
ran my business out of a small toaster oven for about 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years. So it's not impossible. It's something you can always do. You can start small. You don't have to spend a lot of money into starting up a career in this, or even if you just want to bake at home for yourself, for people you like. It's not a very intimidating thing, and it does take time to learn, but that's only because you need to get experienced in the field, because let's face it, it is true for everything. Like everything, you need 1 or 2 attempts in at the minimum, at the least, to actually gain any kind of experience in that field. So you cannot expect to have the perfect results the first time you bake. I didn't have them. I also had my failures, my share of failures, and it's okay. It's okay to do so. It's okay to take your time. Just know that if you're thinking about doing this professionally, it may take you a little longer to learn everything, but you can always start from the basics, and you can always give your customers exactly what they need, exactly what you can bake. So let's say you've only mastered cheesecakes, you can only sell cheesecakes, and that's fine. That's your business, that's your model. If you want to do that, you can do that. So don't stop from doing it today because you feel like you may not be able to give people everything they need. They don't need everything. I didn't know how to make macarons till the second year of my baking. Like actually 3 years into my baking, I did not know how to make macarons, and that was fine. I somehow managed, and when people realized that I can, they started ordering, and now I do them. So it's okay. It's all right. It's not that intimidating. I will definitely take more classes, and I will hope to reach more of you and be able to give you better advice once it's a one-on-one class, and maybe you can ask me questions up front. And I hope that I have served the purpose of this session and been able to answer everybody. And I'm really sorry for the connectivity on Instagram. I hope
before you close, the instant messages I was reading, Anug expressed that he was very, very surprised that being such a being a professional baker, you are so easy with questions that you're answering everybody's questions. He was very, very touched by
See,
that.
I am competitive with myself, and I try to do better than myself every day, but I do not take anybody else as a direct competition, not because I'm vain, but because I believe that everybody who has talent should reach where they want to reach. And it's absolutely okay. Ask me. I will not, of course, give you recipes off the bat because I run a business and I don't want to kill myself over it. But I will try to help people trying to reach where they are trying to reach every day. And that's something everybody should do, because if you have somebody that you can advise to do better, and if they have the talent for it, why not? It is something you should do for everybody. So with that said, thank you everybody who joined me today. Thank you, Sudo. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll just take my leave.
Okay. Thank
Bye-bye.
you everybody at Thea for watching us today. I hope you learned something new. You cleared your doubts, and this was just a little bit of a teaser, or let's say. we just wanted to reach you and tell you about what you should actually have before you start baking. And for those of y'all who really want to go ahead with this, keep watching. We'll be doing more sessions where you can do a bit more hands-on baking, learn a few more details. I hope today's session really helped you. There'll be further sessions, as I said. Keep watching. Till then, bye-bye.
Oh, hi.